Okay. Oh, there we go. All right. How many of you have caused a production incident or at least seen someone cause a production incident? All right. In case you can't see, everybody just raised their hands, which is good because I'm about to tell you my own story. So not too long ago, I caused my first one. And I ran a script that accidentally brought our production environment to a complete halt for 3 to 4 minutes. And it was just 3 to 4 minutes at the time, but as most of you know, that can be a pretty traumatic experience. And there's this rush of emotions you have coming towards you, and you don't know what to do with them. And I was terrified. I was looking for the biggest rock I could to hide under because I was scared of what might happen to me, what the consequences might be for me, and I knew I had did something I shouldn't have done, and I should have known better. So I was left with all these emotions and knowing not what to do with them. But then I started looking at the world around me and in more context. And when I look at the news, I realize we point fingers at each other pretty easily, like the S3 outage, the false ballistic missile alert in Hawaii, or the Equifax breach. Each one of them blamed a single person, and they all made national headlines. So I started to understand why it's so nerve-wracking to cause an outage. And the reality of the situation is that we point fingers at each other really easily, and there's a natural reason for it. It's the simplest thing to do, and it's the simplest answer for what went wrong, even though it doesn't tell you why. But it also absolves us from the guilt and blame associated with an incident, which is a natural human response to fear. But this left me with more questions. I started wondering, what is human error? Why do we point fingers at each other? What are we trying to achieve from this? And is there a better way to do it? So to answer the first question, I found that human error is actually just a label. It's a label for an unsatisfactory result of what we believe someone should have done but didn't do at the time. And it doesn't give us any context as to why it made sense at the time for them to make that choice. And for those of us that accept human error as the leading root cause, often our solution is to remove humans from the system or replace their role in the system. Because after all, we see them as the greatest safety threat to our systems, and this makes the most sense to us. And it also makes the most sense to us because we're victims of hindsight bias, as I was with my own incident. And hindsight bias is it makes us think that looking past on an incident, it becomes obvious that that person made a mistake. It makes them seem as if they were just being negligent and they should have known better. So it becomes a natural justification to remove them from the situation completely. Because it makes it look like it's gonna make our system safer. So a lot of us stop there. And that's a problem, I think. Because there's a lot more to the story than that, as most of us would know, and there was a lot more to the story with my incident that I caused. And so what's more to the story is that I think we work in very complex systems, and I don't need to tell you this. But in these complex systems, there are numerous possible paths to error. And most of the time, we're running around trying to avoid all these possible paths to error and not accidentally find one. And so a possible path to error often has a number of preconditions that need to take place. This can be a wrong decision, a wrong design, before a human ever intervenes with an action. And that's what ends up causing an accident. And this introduces cognitive complexity into our daily jobs. On top of that, we deal with organizational complexity. So this might be the pressures we have placed upon us by stakeholders to get things done faster rather than better. And in turn, we sacrifice quality knowing that it's gonna hurt us later. And that with this organizational complexity and cognitive complexity, we try and manage it with automation. Because we think automation is our best tools for combating the most basic human error, and it is. And so we automate to the best of our abilities. But as new preconditions are introduced into the system, your automation is no more prepared for them than you are. Because after all, you designed it, so it has your inherent biases in it for understanding how the system works. And so we're roped in through organizational complexity, like I've mentioned, and cognitive complexity. And honestly, it's a wonder to me that we don't make more mistakes every day. Because with all this cognitive load that we have to manage, our job has become really hard to understand the complete systems in this complexity. So now human error to me is looking more like the tip of an iceberg. It's just a symptom. And I believe what's under that tip of the iceberg is not a root cause actually, but it's the systematic vulnerabilities that lie within our organizations and our teams. And when we ignore that what's under the iceberg and we just look at the symptom, we're effectively digging our heads in the sand. We're ignoring the rest of the stories, and those are the things that can make our systems more resilient and safer in the end. But one of the ways I believe we actually can make our systems safer and more resilient is by promoting a just culture. And a just culture, if you're not familiar with it, is one in where we hold engineers accountable for the decisions they make, but we also allow them to make mistakes and encourage them to do it, because as they expose vulnerabilities, they're making our systems safer. One way of doing this can be a blameless post-incident or post-mortem report, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with and do. But I want to emphasize here that the most important thing, I think, are the remediation steps, because those remediation steps are what's going to prevent the incident from happening again or prevent similar incidents from happening again. And so with that, I want to end from a quote from John Oswald, who's a leader in the blameless culture, and that is that humans will make mistakes. So allow it, encourage it, and embrace it. Thank you.